In episode 6 of House of the Dragon, Rhaenyra shared a passionate kiss with her new confidant, Mysaria. This scene rippled through the fandom, creating happiness, anger, and disappointment. One side says they saw this from miles away, another yells unnecessary woke propaganda. In this video, I will look at the actual critique and answer it seriously and honestly. I will look at both Rhaenyra and Mysaria's relationship, as well as Rhaenyra and Alicent's. I will deep dive into the rumors about the kiss being unscripted, and look at the history of queer rep in Game of Thrones to be able to answer what about the kiss is so provoking and exactly how gay is House of the Dragon. Hi and welcome to Obviously Queer with me, Katja. Let's get into it. Part 1. Dismantling the critique of necessity. What's interesting with the majority of the critique against Rhaenyra being bisexual is that it's disguised as critique against the storytelling. People claim to have nothing against the LGBTQ. This scene just wasn't necessary. There is also blatant homophobia in this pile, especially connected to this being a part of the woke agenda, of course. But a surprising amount don't mind the gays. But this just didn't actually add anything. Scenes with intimacy, if we're to call it that, are usually added to serve one of two purposes. A tool for story building or a tool for character building. Story building is what people usually expect from a hookup scene, which is what people are upset this scene was not providing. Like, you would think that Alicent buying information with foot pics or Daemon having sex dreams about his mom would be more provoking, but it isn't. It's with this kiss, the audience demands an urgent explanation as to why you had to see that. The kiss between Mysaria and Rhaenyra does not present an immediate consequence. This is true. But calling out the scene as unnecessary before you know where the narrative will go is not a valid argument. Regardless where this leads us, the kiss does establish and concretize a very intimate and growing relationship that is important to Rhaenyra as a character, both in her role as a leader and privately. The other way is character building, and can be a way to show the audience something about a character other than the immediate continuation of the narrative. Examples of character building scenes are, for example, Alicent and Cole's sex scene, who added to Alicent's mom shame and feeling of guilt in her parenthood, as well as Aemon's brothel scene, who added complexity to both his character and to his relationship to his older brother. A clear purpose of this scene, except to show that this is an important and unique relationship to her, is simply to establish Rhaenyra as a queer character. A hookup scene is the easiest way to give this information to the audience, especially in fantasy or other world buildings where characters don't have a reason to naturally come out or wear like a rainbow sweater. When people complain that the scene was unnecessary, what they mean isn't that the scene was unnecessary, because, well, it serves a very clear message. It confirms Rhaenyra's sexuality and deepens her relationship with Mysaria. What people mean is that they think it was unnecessary to make Rhaenyra bisexual. Why was it necessary to make her gay? To which I would like to quote George R.R. Martin, who, well, wrote the books.
We have several gay characters, and in the HBO series it's a little more blatant.
Yes.
I was wondering, is there a purpose that you did for making these characters gay, or was it just incidental?
Is there a purpose that I had for making the characters gay? Well, I've noticed that there are gay people in the world.
Rhaenyra isn't explicitly bisexual in the book, but it's widely discussed if she was. The book on which this series is based, Fire and Blood, is a historical retelling, with all that comes with such. The book has a very unreliable narrator and conscious inaccuracies. It's therefore agreed upon in the fandom that it's more to the story than what's being told, as it is in all history books. Ryan Condal, who is the showrunner of this series, often talks about adapting this specific book.
On an adapter level, and I realize this is something that, people might take issue with, I think what we're trying to do is render a version of this that isn't just the thing that you expect every week, where oh, that's interesting. The history happened, but not in the way that I expected it was going to happen. That thing was slightly different, or it was wrong, or the accepted notion of how that happened was totally different.
Meaning that some voices, some stories, would have been left out. It would have happened secretly, it would have been ignored, or the person writing the book wouldn't have understood the whole picture. One very common and well-spread interpretation of the subtext in the Fire and Blood fandom is that Rhaenyra and Laena had an affair. In HBO's adaptation, Rhaenyra has been gender non-conforming since the opening scene of season 1. She has done what she wants, ignored her expected duties as princess and woman, slept with whoever she wants. She dresses more masculine, darker color, harder lines, strong shoulders, masculine materials. Several times she's worded her wish of being a boy. She longs for the freedom and power that comes with masculinity, the way in which a man can take on the world, hungry with passion and without apology. A way of life she has adapted to the best of her abilities. When a character is questioning so many social structures and living outside heteronormativity, it's not strange nor unexpected that they would also question and rebel against heterosexuality. In a Variety article from the 21st of July this year, Emma Darcy answers if she's always seen Rhaenyra as a queer character. What I do think is that she is really sexual. Maybe that's one of the real joys of playing her, is that I think she's a super embodied character who knows when her body is sort of saying something. And that goes for many different contexts. I don't think she's frightened by her body's instructions. And certainly I think there was great intimacy with her early relationship with Alicent. As a young girl, she's flirting with Alicent, and their ambiguous friends or lover situationship is something consciously played with and confirmed by both actors and creators. We will come back to this. Don't worry. In the scene with Mysaria, Rhaenyra is unsure of herself, doubting her choices and the path laid out for her. She's impressed by Mysaria, another self-made, unafraid woman, and Rhaenyra is desperate for someone to believe in her as leader and authority. Mysaria says all the right things, and Rhaenyra in that moment acts on her physical impulses, something very in character for her. To lean into desire when you are in a vulnerable place is not unheard of. With all this queer characterization behind us, together with her ambiguous sexuality in the books, together with a well-portrayed sense of identification and connection she feels with Mysaria, it really shouldn't be a shock that she wasn't straight. People love to throw around the word media literacy nowadays, and people love to say you lack media literacy to different viewings of a show. I don't think people who missed Rhaenyra's queerness lack media literacy. I just don't think people naturally have that lens, which is why this scene is necessary. Often sexuality needs to be spelled out because people have trouble picking up queer subtext. See example, this show and the reception. But again, people aren't really mad because this scene was unnecessary. They're mad because Rhaenyra is gay now. This episode has, while recording this, the lowest rating in House of the Dragon and one of the lowest ratings in the entire Game of Thrones franchise. Episode 6 was not the strongest one, it was okay, not the best, but not a one-star episode. The critique against this kiss isn't proportionate to the screen time and its effect/lack of effect to the story. You could almost believe this is the first time we see a queer person in Westeros, which it's not. In season 1 of Game of Thrones, we see 2 Sapphic scenes. Khaleesi's almost sex scene, where she learns how to please a man from her maiden, as well as the lesbian scene in the brothel with Littlefinger. But these are unprovoking scenes. They take place to please men. And I'm not even talking about the male gaze here. They take place to please men, literally. The women have no lesbian desire outside of that performed and practiced for male desire. It doesn't challenge anything about gender, dynamics, or heteronormativity. Therefore, the reception will not be as hateful. Then we have the queer, recurring characters. Yara Greyjoy, Renly Baratheon, Loras Tyrell, Oberyn Martell, and Laenor Velaryon. I enjoy these portrayals. Some of them were quite remarkable for early 2010s, and they were not hated upon. So what about Rhaenyra's kiss is so provoking? Well, there are 4 things I would like to lift that stand out about Rhaenyra's coming out that are worth lifting if we are to understand why people are mad to the extent that they are. 1. that Rhaenyra is the main character. Game of Thrones had a huge ensemble cast with an unclear character hierarchy. Each episode featured the cast the size of my hometown, and of those, a few were queer, and these characters, even though recurring, were not main ones. Rhaenyra, I would say, is the main character. And main characters usually aren't queer, unless it's a show marketed towards queers. The second thing that stands out about Rhaenyra as a queer character is that it wasn't clear from the start. In popular culture, it's almost always clear from early on in the show where people identify sexually. That a main character in mainstream media comes out in season 2 is very rare. Yara, Renly, Loras, Oberyn, and Laena are all presented to us as queer people. The media lets the audience know from the start. For viewers with an ambiguous amount of suppressed or proud homophobia, this is safe storytelling. It creates a feeling of control. When characters come out later, especially if they've been hooking up with people of the opposite sex earlier, they are met with critique incomparable to characters that are out from the start. It awakens an anger in many viewers that someone they knew, maybe even identified with or was attracted to, was queer, and they haven't received that information. As an effect, this kind of storytelling has barely been done. This year, though, we've seen multiple characters in popular culture with straight demographic, making characters bisexual in season 2 or later. Bridgerton, The Boys, 991, and now House of the Dragon. All of these characters have been met with such amount of critique and homophobia, especially Bridgerton, where petitions have been created to take it back to its original heterosexual state. What Bridgerton and House of the Dragon have in common, more than making bisexual icons in later seasons, is that they divert from the source material. This is provoking to many book fans and creates an easy excuse to vocalize discontent. You can always blame your response on "this isn't in the book," but being aggravated over unnecessary makeout scenes is wild when we are discussing the world of George R.R. Martin. Daenerys slept with her maid straight up and then never spoke of it again in A Song of Ice and Fire. If George R.R. Martin would have decided, I think Mysaria and Rhaenyra would have it on the floor. And maybe, if it would have looked more like the brothel scene, it would have been more enjoyed by the general man. Because lastly, the fourth reason why people hate this scene when they say it's about necessity. People have built up anger from the themes of feminism in House of the Dragon. After Game of Thrones, which received critique for its over-portrayal of sexual violence against women, for example, House of the Dragon took another route. Multiple female producers, writers, and directors. These people have an open and clear feminist viewpoint, which you can see in, for example, their lack of female sexualization, realistic portrayals of childbirth, and the lack of, well, rape. No extremism, in my opinion, but you can taste the misogyny in many discussions about this show. The dislike is always blamed on the female creators. The women ruined this show. They don't understand the source material, and now everyone's a lesbian. When will the wokeness end? Part 2. Dismantling the critique of no build-up and addressing the rumors about Emma's improvisation. Now it's time for us to dig into the second most common critique, that it came out of nowhere. It had no build-up. They went from platonic to lovers just like that. Okay, sure, Jan. But here are the facts. Every Sapphic I know, and I have quite a collection, saw this from episode 1. Based on social media, many straight people did not. This was missed for the same reason people haven't read Rhaenyra as a queer character. They are not looking, but that doesn't mean it's not shown. This build-up has happened simultaneously on 2 separate roads. The first is Rhaenyra as a queer character, and this we addressed in the breaking down of the critique of necessity. namely that Rhaenyra in herself portrays a norm-breaking character for that time. The second road is her interactions with Mysaria. If you haven't seen the show, Mysaria is a former sex worker and lover of Daemon, Rhaenyra's ex, but a current schemer. Rhaenyra, unlike Daemon, truly listens to Mysaria and values her, but ultimately sticks to her word and sets Mysaria free. In turn, Mysaria returns, taken by Rhaenyra's strength, honesty, and overall risk, and decides to help her to get the crown. The way this first meeting is filmed, the warm light, how close the camera is to them, and how close they are to each other, it's supposed to create a feeling of intimacy. We are shown that this is an important meeting. After their first meeting follows a well-thought-out and plausible development of their relationship. Rhaenyra and Mysaria, though they lived very different lives, have a lot of common ground. Both lonely and self-made women fighting their way to the top with the means necessary. They are smart and cunning, but also have empathy. Though they are from different social and economical classes, they quickly show respect for one another. Throughout this season, Rhaenyra is becoming more and more distant from the rest of the world. She keeps her distance from the city outside, from Daemon, from the people around her overall. But she opens up to Mysaria. To Mysaria, she complains and confesses. From early on in their relationship, she isn't afraid to show herself as weak, vocalizing her issues with her small council and her insecurities in the role. She smiles and overall looks soft with Mysaria in a way she does not do with the other characters. In media, a sexual or romantic interest is often portrayed by lingering gazes, something these two often do. Do you guys think this scene feels heterosexual? Jace clearly does not. And then I haven't even mentioned the scenes where Rhaenyra is clearly flustered. All of this is good build-up for a meaningful relationship. It's good build-up for romance. To TV Insider, Sonia Mizuno describes their build-up as, when you look back in hindsight, sometimes you're like, yes, of course, I fancied that person for ages. And you realize they're the only thing you can think about. There's something in that which is going on. I don't think Mysaria thought he would get to where he gets to at the end of this episode, but I do think that she has huge admiration for this woman. She's incredibly attractive. Not just in the physical sense, but just as a soul, as a human, what she represents. How can she not be attracted to that, in a way? Queer tension can be difficult to portray. I've made several videos on that subject, this on FF in Fandom being the most profound. In it, I lift the issues that creators often have in portraying Sapphic sexual tension. Since lesbians on TV have such a history of sexualization, creators today often go the other route. Wholesome, romantic, and therefore washed clean of desire. I think it's impressive that the relationship is built clearly on an emotional connection, but still manage to portray sexual tension. Usually, unfortunately, popular culture have issues with creating that tension because they focus too much on the emotional connection. I think House of the Dragon managed to portray a moment of want between women without it feeling washed clean of sexual tension or overly sexual. In a Variety interview, Emma Darcy states that initially, there is huge feelings of empathy and gratitude towards this person. Rhaenyra is hugely affected by the life that Mysaria has lived so bravely. Then, they are two bodies completely overrun by touch. As soon as they embrace and their bodies are touching, I think it's pure bodily desire. And I can tell that's how they played it. It's funny that so many people thought this came out of left field and had no build-up, when for me, I think this season built up their tension in a way that was very plausible and thrilling. Probably I, as a queer person, enjoy that it wasn't so on the nose that same-sex flirting usually has to be for people to not think it came out of nowhere. It was just vibes from two great actors who knew their own characters very well. I loved how affected Rhaenyra was afterwards. I thought it was cute, I thought it was fun, I thought it was sexy. Not long after episode 6 was released, the news that the kiss was unscripted and improvised by Emma Darcy hit the world. This created huge headlines and quickly became the truth, discussed and heavily disliked by the majority of the fandom. This information that Emma improvised the kiss on the spot is being used as an argument to why this scene is unnecessary and completely out of place, spurring comments like it's absurd that they make the decision to change the story without a plan as to where it's going, dumbest shit ever. Or Emma thought it was a cool thing to do, so the director put it in the script. I'm not joking, that's legit what happened. The rumor that Emma came up with a kiss is extra damaging, since Emma is themselves a queer person. People are saying Emma is pushing the personal queer agenda into the show, and a lot of people vocalize their issues with Emma doing this to their co-worker. Isn't that a Me Too situation? Emma wanted this kiss so bad, and imagine a male actor doing this. What we have witnessed here is a classic example of how fast misinformation can spread online and how fast that can be taken as the truth and then used as an argument to homophobic bullshit. All of these articles, all of this hate comes from one interview with Sonoya Mizuno, who plays Mysaria, in The Wrap, released the 21st of July. All articles, like this from Collider, which bluntly states that the kiss was improvised, reference that The Wrap article and that article only. In that The Wrap article, Mizuno says that it wasn't scripted as a kiss. I think it was scripted as there's just a breath between them or something, and then whatever happens is interrupted, Mizuno told The Wrap, adding that she, Darcy, and showrunner Ryan Condal had many conversations across months with everyone on board about where the story was going. It was Darcy who suggested how the scene could play out. Because we were separate in the room, and Mysaria has told this story, Darcy felt the instinct to hold her, to comfort her, she added. From that, it felt so organic to go into the kiss. What is being said is that in the script, Rhaenyra and Mysaria have an intimate moment that gets interrupted, and that Mizuno, Darcy, and showrunner Ryan Condal for months afterwards planned what that meant. Mizuno says Emma came up with the idea that they would hug. TV Insider also released an interview with Sonoya. In that, they ask, how long have you known that this is where Mysaria and Rhaenyra's relationship was headed? To which she replies, after I got the job and spoke to the showrunners, they said this was a potentiality. They said the plan was definitely for Mysaria and Rhaenyra to start working together, with the potential for romance. So I knew before we started season 1. I think it was when we got the script for season 2, and at the end of this episode, I remember it said, their foreheads are touching, there's just a breath between them, and then what happens next is interrupted. But it didn't define what the thing was that happened, and we had many conversations about it in pre-production and during production, but both Emma and I felt very strongly that we didn't want the moment to feel queer-baiting in any way. So there was that, but there was also kind of finding the truth of that moment and their relationship. And it felt very right that was where it was going. It was kind of a collaborative decision to where it would go. In the official House of the Dragon podcast by HBO, they had executive producer Sarah Hess as a guest that also confirmed this.
So it was Emma's idea, essentially. Like it came from filming the scene?
No. That was written in.
Oh,
I'm just saying
okay.
That it was written in for sure. We always wanted that, although obviously we discussed it with Emma and Sonoya at great length before we went into it. But it was Emma's impulse to just that step towards Sonoya and that embracing of her as a way to sort of enter that moment.
Does anyone quote this article? No. Does anyone quote the podcast? No. Misinformation happens all the time in these modern ages. People don't bother finding the source. But in this case, I do think it's important to have the receipts, because this fact is so widely used as an argument against the kiss taking place. It's used as an argument that it wasn't thought into the storytelling when it very much was. According to Hess and quotes from Mizuno that aren't taken out of context, what was in the script was an almost kiss. It doesn't really matter if the kiss was explicit or not in the original script, but what people need to understand is that it was not Emma's suggestion, and she did not improvise it on the spot. It's clear that the kiss was something multiple people worked with for months, and the potential for romance between them has been an idea since season 1. quote that instead. Part 3. Let's talk about Rhaenicent. The thing with the kiss is that it also puts another layer on the relationship of Rhaenyra and Alicent. It's a confirmation that Rhaenyra is attracted to women, and that's another piece in the complex relationship that is Rhaenicent. At the heart, House of the Dragon is a lesbian divorce drama. I am aware that Alicent's and Rhaenyra's relationship is portrayed very differently in the TV series and in the book. I understand that people who love the book want a more textbook adaptation. This is always the case. Which I will admit, if you've seen this far, has not read the books. I am judging this piece of media as an individual piece of media, and I think there is value in doing so. An adaptation of this scale will do major changes to form it into its new shape, to make it available to millions of people who did not, nor will ever, read the books. When you're a fan of a book, and God knows I'm aware, it can feel like the adaptation should be made for you. In my opinion, the book is often better than the film because the adaptation didn't make enough changes to make it suitable for this new kind of storytelling. Adaptations are their own piece of handicraft and should be judged thereafter. What House of the Dragon does so well is that at the center of these larger-than-life situations is a deeply interpersonal betrayal. The core of this madness of war, dragons and slaughters are two 14-year-old girls who cannot get past the hurt caused by their childhood confidant. Director Jeeta Vasant Patel says to IndieWire, as much as House of the Dragon is about a sprawling ensemble and their many, many dragons, it boils down to the two women on the poster and their catastrophic fallout. Sarah Hess, writer and executive producer, says this as well in the after-show recap.
There's so much in play. There are armies, there are dragons, there's castle strongholds and political maneuvering, but at the end of the day, it comes down to these two women trying to figure it out.
Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship can be read in many ways. There is a conscious level of homoeroticism added into the show, though, by both actors and creators. The audience might or might not pick up on it, but there is no discussions on the implications. This first came to the surface in a well-known and often quoted article from Variety with writer and executive producer Sarah Hess in 2022, in which she stated that there is an element of queerness to it, whether you see it that way or just the unbelievably passionate friendships that women have with each other at that age. I think understanding that element of it sort of informs the entire rest of their relationship. In this article, she also says that Olivia, who played Alicent, has told me she believes, and this is her headcanon, that they at some point kissed or made out or had some kind of physical interaction that Alicent's mother found out about and forbade. And that was Olivia's head story. Oh, I can't do that. That's not right. And that's the background for her in their relationship going forward. Showrunner Mikhail Shapushnik says on the official House of the Dragon podcast that
if you look at the way that Alicent and Rhaenyra's relationship develops in the first 5 episodes and first 4 or 5 years of their time that we spend with them, they are good friends with this potential romantic entanglement from earlier on that has always been a big thing for me, that I thought was an essential component of why they are such close friends. It seems like it's a kind of unrequited love. It's not something that Alicent chose to encourage. Did they ever have a thing? Don't know, but there's something there, right? And Rhaenyra has this deep longing for her best friend.
Jeeta Vasant Patel says to IndieWire, I always thought about the metaphor for it as two lovers that have been divorced and still love each other. She says that part of it is that they both want to be with each other in a way they can't understand and can't explain. It's like first love. In a roundtable press interview with insider Pop Sugar and Metacritic, Carrie said that her initial reaction to the script read-through was that Rhaenyra and Alicent are in love a little bit, and so the actors played around with the idea of young girls having a special emotional closeness to their best friends. It's 100% something we were conscious of, so if it reads on screen, it was purposeful. What the creators and actors are doing here is that they are adding queer subtext. Queer subtext, or queer coding, is quite a discussed term, especially in modern age. It simply means that actors or creators add themes, characteristics, or other non-explicit implications of queerness into a piece of media. Usually this is so that censorship and production companies won't delete it, but not so subtle that others in the community wouldn't be able to pick it up. The term really began being used in the 1990s when the documentary The Celluloid Closet made the book by Vito Russo more easily available. Queer coding, or queer subtext, was a common practice between 1920 and 1990 as an effect and after effect of the Hays Code, a set of rules for filmmaking which, among other things, banned portrayals of queerness in Hollywood. During this time and quite some time afterwards, queer coding was necessary. You couldn't portray queerness in Hollywood. Today, when LGBTQ portrayals are much more commonplace in all types of media, many people discuss the problematic aspects of queer coding, namely that it's a slippery slope to queerbaiting. Many terms here, but queerbaiting in short is when production companies use marketing or add hints in the media to imply that queer content is going to occur without ever having plans to make it so. This way you can allure gay viewers without pissing off any homophobes. It's been highly critiqued and is not very common today. Queer coding still takes place though, even in the 21st century, and can do so for the same reasons that it always has. Fear of censorship or conservative production companies. In House of the Dragon, multiple creators agree. We have at least 3 producers and/or directors explicitly confirming this. Rhaenyra and Alicent shared some kind of romantic entanglement. To what extent and what was acted upon in the past is unclear. I do not believe we will get more explicit confirmation. I do not believe that Rhaenicent will get a happy Sapphic ending. HBO Max nor George R.R. Martin wouldn't probably approve that much of a change to the source material, nor that level of non-canon homosexuality. And the backlash from the fans wouldn't be worth it. Instead, House of the Dragon adds, by queer-coding Rhaenicent, another layer to the story that the audience can choose to see or choose not to see. The important part is that Rhaenyra and Alicent had a deeply loving and important relationship in a very malleable and groundbreaking time. That relationship had levels of homoeroticism, but how much and to what extent is up to the viewer. This kind of queer coding is uncommon in the 2020s because accusations of queerbaiting are so easily thrown. Rhaenyra and Alicent work as each other's mirror characters throughout the series. This means that much of their characterization is created in opposition to the other. Mirror characters are often rivals, and their differences become clear in relationship to each other. Their core beliefs are presented to us in the scene of the reading.
I hope for my father that he gets a son.
You want him to have a son?
I want to fly with you on Dragonback, see the great wonders across the narrow sea and eat only cake.
You aren't worried about your position?
I like this position, it's quite comfortable. Where are you going?
Home.
Rhaenyra, free and unbound by her expectations, Alicent, stricter and powered by duty. Rhaenyra expresses she wants the end goal of her life to be traveling with Alicent eating cake. Alicent cannot succumb to this dream. She cannot take it seriously. I made a video on the sexual liberation of Rhaenyra in Season 1, but an equally interesting aspect of that is the parallels to Alicent, who never has any say in who she takes to her bed in Season 1. When Rhaenyra is portrayed as an active part, dominant and leading, Alicent becomes passive. When Rhaenyra ignores everything expected by her to fulfill her desires, Alicent continues to use her body as a tool, as she has done since she was a child. For a long time, the only positive physical touch we see Alicent getting is that from Rhaenyra in the first episodes. They have both learned to handle the patriarchy. Rhaenyra rebels, Alicent succumbs. By doing so, she grows bitter and resentful, and grows up defending these choices as the right ones. Her obsession with making Aegon king, even when her better judgment says otherwise, stems from her inner conflict with regret. If Aegon is king, then maybe all of her sacrifices were worth something, even though she never wanted them. She has acted dutiful, pure, and according to social expectations, as she should. Rhaenyra has not, and one of the key elements in the cleft between them is how Alicent projects her hatred towards her own life to hatred against Rhaenyra's shameful choices.
What have I done but what was expected of me? Forever upholding the kingdom, the family, the law. Will you flout it all to do as you please?
Alicent, let her go!
Where is duty? Where is sacrifice?
I think it's easy here to read it as internalized homophobia. I also think that suits with the headcanons mentioned by creators and actors, like that Olivia Cook, she plays Alicent as if she and Rhaenyra at some point kissed or made out, or had some kind of physical interaction that Alicent's mother found out about and forbade. And that showrunner, Miguel Sapochnik, sees it as good friends with his potential romantic entanglement from early on. It seems like it's a kind of unrequited love. It's not something that Alicent chose to encourage. All of this, the suppressing of her emotion, her resentment towards the life that was given to her, how highly she thinks of herself for not giving in to lust, the anger and betrayal she feels over the rumors that Rhaenyra slept with Daemon, how she continues to defend the choices being made for her as somehow the rightful path. You might not see it this way, and that's fine, but this queer reading of Rhaenyra and Alicent is right there. The season finale disappointed a lot of people. This video is not a comment on that episode per se. I understand that people expected a lot more, or at least something different. But if you look at Rhaenicent's whole storyline as a queer love story, a lesbian divorce drama, which it is, the season finale contained a wonderful climatic moment deserving of being the end of a final episode. Geeta Vasant Patel tells TV Insider that the finale didn't go to war because this season was focused on Rhaenyra and Alicent. Patel says that Rhaenyra and Alicent's dynamic is absolutely the love story at the center of House of the Dragon. Come with me, Alicent begged Rhaenyra in their last secret meeting. Rhaenyra admitted she wanted to go, but the call to duty was too great. If that love story is a platonic love story to you, that's a reading you can make. But I do believe ignoring this aspect, that there was probably more, deprives you of the emotional weight of the final episode and of the series as a whole. The final episode of season 2 ends with this extremely charged meeting between the two. Alicent finally admitting she could never take on life the way Rhaenyra has and admitting she was wrong. Rhaenyra offended that Alicent, after everything, has taken on a lover, and then they come with me. This reads more logical, but above all, deeper, tenser, more emotional, if you think, like many of the creators and actors do, that they were in love as teens, but Alicent could never accept it. The director of this scene, Geeta Patel, said to TV Insider, "As I listened to Ryan and Sarah talk about the end of the episode," showrunner and writer, "they really wanted the burden from Alicent to now be on Rhaenyra's shoulder. That was the design that they had coming up to that moment." The way Patel chooses to portray this via cinematography, Alicent out in the free by the ocean, Rhaenyra trapped behind bars of her literal written history, is wonderful. I also want to lift a parallel to their mentioned character introduction when Rhaenyra dreams of running away with Alicent. In this scene, Alicent can't take it seriously. Maybe Rhaenyra did really mean it, but I think she did. Alicent here is already trapped in compulsory heterosexuality, in the role expected of her, in her duties and her burdens. But in the season finale, we see it switched when Alicent begs Rhaenyra to run away with her. It's been 2 seasons in the making, but Rhaenyra can't do it. This time, she's locked in. What is that? Oh, it's excellent fucking writing. The fun part about Rhaenicent is that it's shipping, but it's also shipped by the creators, which does affect the content. This episode was directed by Geeta Patel, who ships Rhaenicent, and written by Sarah Hess, who ships Rhaenicent, played by 2 people who absolutely ships Rhaenicent. This, against what people on Reddit are saying, isn't dragging down the quality of the show. It's, in my opinion, improving it. But people often have a critical eye towards shipping. This is because shipping is a hobby and a tendency usually performed by women. It's deemed a low-ranking fan activity. It's used as an insult towards writing and a measurement for quality. One of the worst things a show can do is therefore to adjust itself after fan favorite ships. This is a general truth and never critiqued. The statements quoted in this video, by Hess and Patel mainly, since they are women, are being called fanfiction fantasies. Patel and Hess don't understand the source material, instead letting it be ruined by a bunch of fake fans doing shipping. Hess, Patel, Darcy, Cook, and Michael Sapochnik shipped Rhaenicent before fans did. Maybe, in this case, female fans and fans with an interest in shipping just picked up on cinematic themes and clues of romantic subtext that, well, straight male book fans just missed. And with that said, I want to say that I don't think being influenced by fans is the worst thing creators can do, not automatically. And I don't think a lot of male fans think that either. It's seen that way only in questions of shipping and in questions of representation, because they are female-dominated discussions. Part 4. This part is a game show. So if you thought we were done with deep diving into homophobic responses to episode 6, season 2, surprise, surprise! Surprise, surprise! Hi, and welcome to this game show with me, Obviously Queer. Today we will take a look at some of the comments I found on why the kiss between Rhaenyra and Mysaria was bad. These comments have one thing in common, at least according to the author. They have nothing to do with homophobia. We will look at them and rate them as valid or bullshit. Welcome to I Don't Mind the Gays, but... Honestly, I'm not too happy. Not because she's bi, but because she cheated on Damien. And people seem to be okay with it, because it's a same-sex couple. Bullshit, immediately for me. People are okay with it because we are watching Game of Thrones. It's not like people in this universe have a history of being faithful. You're not okay with it because she's a woman. Don't try to pull that angle in, the homophobic angle. It's more about people wanting a story of substance. Sex is all over TV. We don't need to see it every time we turn on the TV. Bullshit. There wasn't any sex. I don't know. I thought Damon and her don't have a problem with it, but isn't she older? Bullshit, for sure. You can't pull the age card in when we are watching House of the Dragon. And also, if it bothers you that Mysaria is much older than Rhaenyra, it should also bother you that Daemon is older than Rhaenyra. I have no problem with showing same-sex love scenes. My problem is that writers can't seem to create a strong and fierce character without giving her lesbian or bi tendencies. That evokes old stereotypes and is just not necessary. No, I'm gonna call bullshit. What about Rhaenys? I could have went without that scene, not because it was same sex. They can leave all the sex crap out. We all know what happens. We don't need to see all the details. Give us the abridged version. We will understand. I'm sorry. John Borrego, did you watch some kind of secret director's cut? Where are all these details? Give it to me.
Send it to me, Rachel.
Bullshit. Unless you have the directed cut version. In that case, my email is down below. I do think the proximity of the reveal of Mysaria's backstory makes the scene feel a bit ick, even with the understanding that Mysaria initiated it. This is a legit question. Do straight people never kiss each other when you are sad? Because this is bullshit for me. Would make sense, since she is lonely and Mysaria has been a pretty good ally. This one starts out really good. However, it'd be kind of weird for Ray to start messing around with people in times of war. Yeah. You know what? Maybe that's true. It's actually funny when you think about it. If there were war here in Sweden, I would just never kiss my wife again. That's the truth. Bullshit. Again, do straight people just not kiss each other when you were sad? Let me know which one of these was your favorite I don't mind the gays, but... So, jokes aside, we see here some comments that shine light upon a bigger problem than the hypocritical comments on age or infidelity. That's the comments on sex, which are easy to stumble across if you browse the comment section of Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, or Facebook. The comments that I lifted in the game show, TV nowadays is too sexualized and sex doesn't add anything to the story, are just two examples of many. Often this spurred discourse with allies and gays who came in and argued why it's good representation and how straight sex scenes wouldn't be met like this, blah 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 blah. Many things that I've touched upon in this video. The issue, obviously, is that this isn't a sex scene. The fact that it's still discussed as it is, though, is another example of classic latent homophobia and outright homophobic rhetoric. You can do whatever you want in the bedroom, but don't shove it in my face. Or protect the children. This idea that homosexuality is inherently sexual and everything connected to homosexuality is also connected to sex. This homophobic viewpoint is the foundation of many dangerous political movements in the right, such as the Don't Say Gay bill in Florida, which prohibits discussions of LGBTQ themes in lower grade levels. They do so because homosexuality is deemed inappropriate for kids, simply because it's always seen as being connected to sex. Here we see the act of a quite short, fully dressed makeout scene being seen as a sexual act, and the discourse surrounding it treats it as a full-on sex act. This is also an underlying reason to why this scene felt unnecessary to a lot of people, and they honestly don't even seem to understand that no sex was involved in the making of this scene. But if I'm being honest, this isn't the kind of comment that bothers me the most. The one that bothers me the most are comments like this. Two females kissing isn't LGBTQ! Exclamation mark. It's two females sharing an emotional bond, be it through fear or love or acceptance. I believe Rhaenyra's kiss was one of acceptance of pain shared, which us men don't understand. Girls being girls. There's nothing LGBTQ about this. Gal pals. I often talk on this channel about contemporary lesbiophobia, and I often do so by discussing what I call lesbian sexualization and lesbian infantilization. With infantilization of Sapphics, I mean, for example, that lesbian sex isn't seen as a completed sex act, the widespread idea that bisexual women are really straight women looking for attention. With infantilization of Sapphics, I mean that women can make out, and people see it as two heterosexual friends finding common ground. Sexualization, both the part that reduces your existence to sex and the part that fetishizes you, are applicable to both gay men and gay women. But the infantilization are a quite lesbian thing. Like, this might just be me, but this is my channel, so I'm gonna say it. I'd rather be called a slur. Part 5. End discussion. I believe this scene was a good scene. That's my final conclusion. I think it was well written, well performed, and I think it can have a narrative purpose in the upcoming seasons. But even if this is all we got, even if nothing else comes out of it, I still think it's a good scene. I think it was a rare portrayal of a lesbian makeout scene that actually featured some proper feeling, and I think it was necessary as a way to clarify Rhaenyra's bisexuality. I think this kiss was a good way and necessary way to create explicit sapphic content in a show that otherwise just plays with the subtext. I don't think House of the Dragon is queerbaiting. Absolutely not with this scene, but also not with Rhaenicent. I do understand, though, that all of this, have they not, maybe they kissed, maybe they didn't, can be frustrating to viewers who want explicit representation. I too love explicit representation. But I don't mind this ambiguity, simply because it feels much more gay than queerbaiting does. Emma Darcy, Emily Carey, and Sarah Hess are queer women, and I feel that this is done with respect. A key component of queerbaiting is that it's done by taking advantage of the queer community. Especially now, with Rhaenyra being bisexual and a Sapphic kiss taking place, I don't think that we should call it that. It's easy to watch a video like this one I've made, or even more to go into common fields of social media and feel discouraged, disappointed or sad about the world and the narrow-minded way people view lesbians. I enjoy and get through the world by doing this, picking apart the critique, laughing at it, arguing with it. But the queer response has been great. If you want other uplifting reactions to this, I highly recommend going on Tumblr. While homophobes had breakdowns on Reddit and close-minded House of the Dragon enthusiasts argued about the quality of the storytelling on Twitter, Tumblr was having a field day. A lovely, creative, supportive field day. I would like to end this video with the last quote in a video with many, many quotes. This also from an interview with Sonoya Mizuno from TV Insider. Will there be more opportunities for romance? You bloody well hope so. I hope so. For the sake of all the gays. I hope so. I hope you enjoy this video. I've never written, filmed, and edited a video this fast in my life. It will not happen again. If you watched this far, thank you. Truly, I appreciate a comment. It really helps the algorithm push my stuff. If you want to reach me between my videos, I would love to hear from you. You can reach me on email, TikTok, and on Goodreads. And I will see you around eventually.